This takes place in 1985 when I was 18 years old. My family, my parents, myself, and my 16-year-old sister Amani lived in a quiet neighborhood in Calgary. Everything in my eyes was perfect. Everything except our neighbor David. I loathed David. He was 22 years old, very cocky because he played electric guitar in some local rock band. He would always bring different women over, and from my sister's window she could hear everything. Whenever Amani and I would walk home from school, a shirtless David would conveniently be there doing bicep curls in his front yard. Every day he managed to find a way to greet Amani, and she would greet him back. He always got a gross feeling about it because he would just stare at Amani until she entered the house. His eyes were so intense, and it was very predatory and off-putting. It was a very hot Saturday, and our parents were away. Amani was sleeping, but she got woken up by the sound of her window blinds twisting around. Amani immediately got up and turned on her lights to be met by David in her room. Amani was in complete shock, which left her unable to speak. David told Amani not to scream and that he needed something from her. Amani began to tear up because she was convinced David was going to assault her. David grabbed her face and began to wipe her tears. He bluntly told Amani he wanted to marry her. He took out a ring and said his mom gave it to him to give to a lucky girl one day. Amani weakly told him no, and David, still holding her, said they'll move to Mexico or South America to escape everything. Amani said no louder, pushed David away. In response, he got extremely angry and told Amani if she refused again, he would kill her right now. Amani became so overwhelmed she fainted. I heard a loud thump from my sister's room. I immediately knew something was up, so I ran into the room. David was holding her like some messed up groom, and judging by the intense smell in the room, he was drunk. I screamed at David, which startled him, to let her go, and he dropped Amani on her bed. David jumped out the window, and I immediately called the police. David didn't go to jail, but he had to attend mandatory anger management classes and was put under house arrest. My family moved shortly thereafter. It was the summer of 2016. I had just married my longtime girlfriend. Over the course of our 12-year relationship, we had traveled to the mountains several times, both in summer and winter for camping, but also to stay in a nice mountain, hotels, and snowboard on the slopes. Naturally, we both agreed that this is how we wanted to spend our first few weeks of our marriage. We booked a 20-day stay at a mountainside campground on the other side of the country. We also decided to bring our dogs with us, as they too love being outdoors, and we generally bring them camping with us anyway. After 2 days of road tripping, we had arrived, quickly set up and settled in for a good long stay on the mountain. It was beautiful. A couple of days into our trip, and we'd already met a bunch of fellow campers. We are very experienced campers, so we generally attract a lot of attention from novice campers asking for tools or supplies as they see we're all set up. We're usually more than happy to help people get situated if they need matches, cream or sugar, or help setting up their equipment. It was day 4 or 5 when she first made her presence known to us. I will refer to this person as she or her, as we never learned her name. We were sitting down under the shade of one of our large pine trees at the edge of our site, drinking beers and playing cards when she seemingly appeared out of nowhere. She was just suddenly right there. "Can I pet your dog?" she said. Even my dogs didn't see her approach at the very sound of her voice, triggering them into a startled frenzy. As the dogs were worked up already, I politely told her no. Then she just stood there, at the edge of our site. Didn't say a word, just stood there, sort of existing, but not really doing anything. She wasn't exactly staring at us or looking at anything in particular. I asked her if she needed anything. She said no. And then after a few minutes, she just walked off. I work with people with brain injuries, so I've had my fair share of experiences with unusual behaviors, including people with poor social skills. So I wasn't about to write this person off as creepy just yet. But she definitely had my attention. I casually watched her walk off and enter a campsite across the path, and a few sites down from ours. There was already a small tent set up in the site, but she proceeded to pull an even smaller single-person tent from her backpack and began setting it up. The day prior, we saw 2 young girls set up the other tent and were clearly the occupants of the site. There was no further interaction with her that day, although we did notice that the owners of the other tent on the site were not around all that day either, and we didn't see them return that night. Well, the next morning, I am walking to the camp showers to clean up for the day. As I walk past her site, I see she is sitting in her tent reading a book. The tent door is open. I pay no attention and keep walking my way to take a shower. When I'm done with my shower and walking back, I notice her tent is now closed, but it's jiggling about, so I know someone is in there. Then she made her presence known in a big way. Just as I'm approaching her site on the way to mine, she unzips her tent, and I immediately see that she is completely nude. She then positions herself just inside the tent at the door and lets this over-the-top full body stretch, and held her arms way up in the sky while pushing her chest forward, like it was some kind of mating ritual designed just for me. When she does this, she lets out what I can only describe as an exotic moan. It was pretty obvious she was putting on a show for me. I continue on my way to my site and tell my wife about the display I'd just been witness to. We both laugh it off and moved on with our plans to day hike to a good trail to a waterfall. The trailhead for this hike was accessible from the campgrounds, so we didn't have to drive to get there. We just walked the additional 2 kilometers to the actual trail. We walked at a good pace, so when we got to the trail, we decided to stop for a few minutes and take some photos of the surrounding mountains before heading into the thicker bush. After sitting there for maybe 5 minutes while my wife is taking pictures, she emerges from the trail that leads towards the campground. At first I thought, okay, coincidence, she's staying here and it's a pretty common trail. But then she sees that I see her and she stops dead in her tracks and just stands there. Same demeanor as our first encounter, just standing. Not doing anything in particular, but also sending creepy vibes our way. This was the first time I said to my wife, I think we have a stalker. Confused, my wife then looks to where I'm looking and is immediately a little creeped out. Once again I think, whatever, maybe she's just hiking the trail, no big deal. So we continue on the trail at a good pace, and she maintains a consistent distance behind us. Our dogs at this point are a little distracted by her, and our youngest dog keeps turning around to watch her. I got a little fed up with the dog constantly stopping to look back, so I decided we will stop for some water and let this woman pass. Well, what does she do but fucking stop walking when we stop and just stands there. Okay, so now we are genuinely concerned because this is approaching horror movie, suspense movie creep level, and I start to wonder what this girl's intentions are. Standing motionless at a distance and refusing to pass us just ramped up the oh shit factor about to 9. So my wife and I agreed to just cut the hike short by taking the shorter loop, which was only a half a kilometer ahead, and head back to our camp. We managed to get some distance between us by jogging every time we would make a turn, and she was finally out of sight. We didn't see her again until later that night. That night, my wife decided to take an evening shower at the camp showers. When she returned to our camp, she tells me our stalker was in the bathrooms also taking a shower. This time, however, she was with 2 other girls and appeared to be getting ready for a night at the club. There's a nearby ski town that has a few nightclubs and bars, so it was reasonable to see that the girls were getting ready for a night out. The 2 girls she was with were the 2 we saw previously set up at her site. My wife explains that she quickly picked up on the fact that the 2 girls and our stalker friend were not well known to each other. It was clear that the girls were close friends with plans on going out partying, and our stalker was making the attempt to be friends and sort of invited herself to join them in their night out. Now we know the ski town well, and the girls kept reinforcing that they were meeting at a specific restaurant before going to the bar. It was currently 10 p.m., and we know the restaurant they were telling her to go to was closed at 10 p.m., so they were lying to her about her plans. The stalker kept asking them too, "Are you sure this place? Are you sure?" They convinced her, and she then left to her tent to finish getting ready while the other 2 friends stayed in the bathroom to finish their makeup. My wife went on to explain how after she left, the other 2 friends were mocking and making fun of our new stalker. They were young 20-somethings acting like little girls in elementary school. My wife has no time for that. Creepy stalker or not, she had to say something to the girls for their behavior. My wife calls them out on their behavior. Well, putting on all the catty bitch bullying aside, The girls explained to my wife that the stalker girl had set up her tent on their site when they were staying with a friend in the ski town. When they returned, they found her living at the site without invitation. She had just taken it upon herself to take a little corner of their site without knowing them at all. The girls said that they were upset with her and trying to make her feel uncomfortable so she would leave. But she wouldn't leave. Of course, my wife asked them why they just didn't report her to the park warden. The excuse they gave was they were leaving the next day and didn't want to make a huge deal out of it. So whatever happened between them and the fake late dinner plans and clubbing is unknown to us. About 3 a.m. that same night, we were all awoken to a blood-curdling scream right outside our camper. At first I was like, holy shit, that must be a wild animal. My wife is trembling, dogs barking, and I am startled but curious. I peel back the window cover to see her, standing motionless on the path outside of our trailer. I had the window cover down maybe 8 to 10 centimeters when she appears to make direct eye contact with me. My heart rate is jacked. What the actual fuck? After gazing in my general direction for what seemed like an eternity, she calmly turns and walks back to her tent. I go to make sure our trailer is locked. After a good hour and a stiff whiskey, we manage to get back to sleep. So the next day is Friday. We have friends from a nearby major city coming up to mountains to spend the weekend with us. We haven't seen them in a while, so we're excited for a couple of days together. While they are not at our site for 15 minutes, as they are setting up their tent, she mysteriously appears out of nowhere yet again. Like bam, there she is, but now this time she is actually in our sight. I hadn't had a chance to tell our friends about her before she arrived, so they were a little more friendly than I was. She asked me once again if she can pet my dog, who during all of this is barking at her. I think I said something like, she isn't being very friendly towards you right now, so I would prefer you didn't. She didn't pet my dog, but she also just stood there, staring at me like she was considering how she would dismember my limbs. She then notices our friend's tent brand as she is still setting it up and comments on how it's the same model as hers, although a larger sleeping capacity. My buddy has picked up on the creep vibes and my general displeasure with her presence, so he just gives her the, oh yeah, cool, and keeps setting it up. Well, she starts grabbing at tent pegs and picking up the hammer and says she will help him set it up because she has experience with it. My buddy declines and asks for his tools back. Cue the fucking psychopath stare down, but this time she has a hammer in hand, adding to the oh shit factor. She literally just drops everything right there and runs off. I go on to explain the last few days to our friends, and they agree we need to keep an eye on her. So by this time, the two girls' friends whose site she had hijacked were packed up and gone. It's now Friday night, and we've been drinking all day, so we're feeling pretty good. It's maybe about 11 p.m. when she walks over to our site again. She says, "Hey, you guys seem to have a lot of extra room with a tent and a camper. Do you think I could stay with you guys tonight? We could have a lot of fun in there together." My buddy is feeling pretty good from all the day beers, so he's pretty forward when he replies, "Did you just propose a gangbang to us?" Now this whole time I'm just sitting in my camp chair with my whiskey taking this all in. She wasn't really taking notice of me at all so far. Then she smiles, turns her head and looks directly down at me and says, "I like your friend." Then she turns around and walks away into the darkness of the night towards the forest. What the fuck? We are all now terrified she's going to return. I decided right then that if we see her again in a creepy fashion, I'm calling the park warden. This is getting silly. Well, the night is winding down, so we all decide to walk together to the bathrooms to clean up for bed. My wife pulls on my hoodie and says, "Babe, look. It was set up on is nearly completely destroyed. Shit everywhere. Just stuff, garbage, clothing, food, everywhere." I thought, okay, this is weird. Could have been a bear? No, we would have heard it. And then I noticed that the tent is gone. She is gone, and left the site a complete mess. As luck would have it, the park patrol was completing their fire rounds and were at the messed up site when we were returning from the bathrooms. We told them there was a girl staying here who was acting erratic, and we suspected she was squatting on the site based on our conversation with the two girls from earlier in the week. We didn't see her again for the rest of the trip until the last full day. There is a great little lookout point not far from our site which has an amazing views of the river and valley below. It was a perfect evening to see the sunset behind the mountains. It was a lovely final send-off to an otherwise beautiful honeymoon. Just when we thought we were done with her, she emerged once again from seemingly nowhere. We were sitting on a couple of chairs that were bolted in place at the viewpoint, taking pictures of the valley below. As my wife is looking through the camera viewfinder, she picks up on the mountain in the distance. She's standing in the woods a little ways down mountain towards the valley, watching us. As her final act, she walked up the mountainside and just sat beside us on a boulder that was beside the chairs. She says nothing, just sits there. My wife has the brilliant idea of asking me to take one last picture of the scenery, and she gives me a little wink. I pick up on her idea right away, and I position myself so this woman is going to be in the picture. My wife wanted this lady's photo in the event something bad happens with her before we can leave the area. At the beautiful scenery, and headed back to our camp for the night. And we didn't hear or see from her again. Upon reflection, we agreed this woman had some serious mental health issues, obviously. She had zero social skills, and we did witness her attempt to make friends with those two girls that shafted her in a terrible way. That being said, she did things way beyond the realm of acceptable social awkwardness. There were moments I thought she would pull out a knife and kill us all where we stood. More than that, the stalking, the midnight screaming, and running off into the woods at night was to terrify us. And I feel a story worthy of this sub. I do have the photo on a thumb drive somewhere, and we'll see about uploading it in a pixelated photo if it's appropriate. To anyone else, the pictures just look like a person sitting in front of the shot. But to us, it's a reminder of our wild adventure and the start of our amazing marriage. To our honeymoon stalker, let's never meet again. I had a stalker from Xbox Live try to find me at work 2 days ago. I'm only 17 and work second shift at my local movie theater. It was Friday night. My weekend had just begun. I was on Xbox Live and playing Overwatch and eating now cold pizza like lots of my friends were. I was kicking considerable ass, more than I normally was at this game, and I was on fire for 3 matches. At around 2 a.m. I decided to step up my game and go in competitive mode. I got into a match at Kings Row, and I was playing Pharah on defense. I got a 15-player kill streak, but I noticed 2 of those kills were on the same guy. At Bastion, I remember his username. The match goes on for another minute, and then I get an invite to a party. The gamer tag was the same as the Bastion I just killed for the 6th time. I wasn't in a party, since all of my friends had called it a night except for me at this point. I decided that whatever he wanted to say could be interesting, so I had him. I'd usually expect it to be some kid, a few years younger than me and talking shit. But to my surprise, it was a grown man on the other end. And even more to my surprise, he sounded like he was in his 30s rather than close to my age. And he had a thick Spanish accent. Immediately, this guy starts cussing me out. I can't lie when I say I half expected this to happen when I got the invite. Now I have that mentality where if you're a jerk to me, I'll return the favor. So I replied with the classic, "Oh, you mad, bro?" Guy doesn't even acknowledge what I just said. Instead of saying he'd fuck my mom like most people did, this guy says, "Fuck you and your entire family. I will make sure to decapitate your mother and make your dad fuck her down the goddamn neck." I was sort of shocked by this, but it didn't last. I'm like, bro, take a fucking chill pill. "No, I want you to..." He stopped. I noticed why ADVA on our team had just killed Bastion Hero again. Now this is where things get scary. It sounded as if he was going to turn into a rabid animal that was trying to suffocate itself on the mic, and screaming and howling and spitting all at the same time. Difficult to describe exactly what sound he was making, but that's the closest I can do. Inhumane noises were coming from this person as if he was being gutted and possessed by a demon at the same time. It was a grown man too, which made the entire thing scary compared to laughing my ass off when it was a 12-year-old. The match ended. The enemy team didn't even get a payload moving. The man loses his shit some more because he lost. Then I decided to be an asshole again and not take this clearly crazy guy's shit. Look, it's not my fault you suck at the game. You're just being treated like a child that you really are. Grow the fuck up, man. Spanish guy did not like this. He just hollered, "Fuck you!" into the microphone for no joke, like 20 seconds. It started getting all crackly. He was being so loud, he was breaking his mic. And then he removed me from the party. I decided that since the match was over, I decided to call it a night, just like my friends had. My overall reaction to what went down was, okay, well, that was something. I logged out, turned off my Xbox, and went to bed. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I realized how much of a dumbass I was for not recording any of it. My friends would have lost it when they heard it. Saturday went by with nothing, and I thought that was it from the pissed Spanish guy. The following day, I logged back into Xbox that morning to play more Overwatch. I noticed I had a message from the guy saying, "Good morning. Insert my full name. I know you have to go to address the movie theater I work at tomorrow." What the fuck? I said aloud. I decided to pull out my phone and take pictures of the screen, and then texted my boss about it, and told her that some guy on Xbox somehow found out where I worked. Now my boss is a bitchy old lady, so she's obviously not going to care what happened on my Xbox. Even though it concerned my work, she just blew it off and told me I still had to come in that day. Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and The Incredible 2s are both hot right now, so we were definitely going to be busy. I ended up coming in the next day at 5:30. It was pretty boring, and busy like I predicted, up until about 8, when a super short guy came in through the door. It was loud and pretty crowded, but the guy fucking hollers my full name. Same Spanish accent from the Xbox. Oh fuck, it was him. I still to this day don't know how he got my info or why he decided to come all the way out to where I worked. The theater fell silent. I just walked to the back room where my boss was and told her that the guy from the Xbox was inside. She repeated the whole, "I don't care what happens to you on Xbox. Get back to work. We're busy." I repeated to her that the guy was inside the building. I didn't know if he wanted to hurt me or not, and I was going to call the cops. I actually ended up calling the cops, and it wasn't until they arrived and spoke to me privately in the back room that my boss ended up taking me seriously. Spanish guy was still inside the lobby, and the cops put him in cuffs and walked him out. I still haven't heard anything from them, and I still don't know how he found my info or why he came all the way where I worked. I still don't know what he planned to do to me. Either way, I'm still a bit shaken up over it. I don't know if he knows my home address or not, and I'm pretty much on guard 24/7. Either way, I own 2 dogs that can scare off anyone, but I'm still pretty terrified of this guy. It's so insane that I pissed off a guy from Xbox, and then he stalks this teenager, visits him. I hope to never meet you again. Update. I contacted my police department and I heard they still taking this guy on Monday, so I have the satisfaction of knowing he didn't get away. They're still being stingy on this information and won't even tell me his name because of the security garbage. I'm waiting for a full police report on this. They promised that they would give me one soon. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm just going to try and not focus on this guy for now.